Hey guys, you're back to Maderi Music. I'm DeMarisa Steely, and I'm here with my co-conspirator partner in crime, Dorian Wallace. Thank you for tuning in. We definitely appreciate your support. We see the views. We see you guys saving our episodes and listening. So thank you for journeying with us. So today we're going to tap into some real shit. Excuse my French. Dorian was at an event and he's going to give you some context on his experience. So I'm going to pass it to you, Dorian.
Yeah, well, I actually am going to pass it back to you first.
Okay.
Just on what was the event and why it might be interesting to hear the perspective that I'm going to get in a second.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you want to hear about the event? So one of the young people that I work with, his name is Himael. He organized a youth event around what was that? I'm drawing a blank. Around Juneteenth. So it was, multi-generational. There were young people, there were elders, there were teens in the movement, people who were familiar with Juneteenth, people who were just learning. But it was an all-Black event. And it happened to be in Dorian's community. And of course, Dorian is my partner. So I invited him to come. I was also a panelist there. And we talked about the importance of mentorship and in our community, the importance of pooling economics. And then Nemo ended the event with what felt like dissertation on our political responsibility as people of color. But in that, addressing the elephant in the room, Dorian was the only white male in the space. And so we're going to tap into that a bit. Like, what did it feel like to be the only white male standing in solidarity in a space where a lot of, topics or conversations around white supremacy came up, conversations around disproportionate resources, and keepers of said resources for people of color wanting to streamline that only to communities of color. Like, what was your experience? Like, how did you feel?
Yeah, so a couple of things, it definitely did feel like an elephant in the room. Like it was, I remember walking into the space and it was that kind of like all eyes on me kind of thing. Like no one was staring at me, but I could tell everyone noticed my presence the moment I walked in. Mm-hmm. To be very frank, like there was a certain amount of like, all right, like I just gotta, be cool, be respectful. Mm-hmm. I'm a guest in this space. I was invited here by, someone who I care deeply about and work with, which was you. It's, this is an opportunity for gaining knowledge and gaining perspective. And so I really went there with the intentions on, just listening and being, another body to support. So the event started off with, there were 4 different stations, and we were divided into groups, 4 different groups that kind of journeyed around. And I believe it was one space was on like community work, one space was on what is economics, one space was on mental health. I forget everything that was involved, but I was with the group and we all did the intro thing. There was one of the elders who was really good. She was a mom of some of the kids there. as well as community organizer, who really led the intros. And it literally went like, around the circle, and it got to me, and everyone just kind of did the, like the turn. And it was just, and I was like, hey, how's everyone doing? My name's Dorian Wallace. I got invited here by DeMarisa Steely. I'm I'm a piano player and a music therapist. And we talked a little bit, and I believe, the question was like, why are we here at this event? And so everybody went around, and there were a lot of, young moms. There were some kids in my group. There was one young man in particular who's, becoming more involved with community activism and organizing, and he wants to learn more about organizational techniques. And I just did a lot of listening, and when it got to me, again, there was I could literally sense everyone just turning, but I wanted to be up front and was like, so I'm here to learn and to be a participant in the space. My people, white folks, are responsible for a lot of destructive things that have taken place all around the world, but specifically within the United States context. And it's important to be involved in communities where we are not the majority. And just on some self-reflection too, I know I have been in many white spaces. In fact, you and I met in a white space where, there's one, or two people of color in a space that is white-led and white-occupied, and literally had to remind myself internally. It was like, this is an experience that that a lot of people of color have gone through, going into a space that they're not sure if they're welcomed by everybody. They're not sure what, here, let me just put it really blunt. I didn't know what everybody thought of me being there. I didn't know if I added any hostility just by my mere presence. Even though this is something you and I talk about a lot, even though I feel a lot of empathy towards those feelings, I also do think it's important for us to, as we were talking about in our last episode about Fred Hampton, but about building rainbow coalitions, because there is a much larger fight than racial and gender equality. There's a lot more that we need to be fighting for. And so, to quote Assata Shakur, it is our duty to fight for our freedom. And so it was really uncomfortable because I literally said basically all of that to the group in a much more short, condensed way. And literally it was very open. Everybody was very open, and they were like, thanks for sharing. And I literally went, oh, okay, which was super funny. But yeah, it was great. One really interesting thing that I witnessed, that just kids say the truth. And there was one little boy who said that he wished that all the white people could paint themselves, that every white person should be forced to paint themselves to be a black person. And so that all the racist white people would kill each other because they would see a black person and try to kill them. And all the non-racist white people wouldn't kill themselves because they wouldn't be. And some of the moms didn't know how to respond to that, especially because I was there.
Right.
And I took it as they were interpreting it as how would they feel if they were the only black person in a white setting and a white kid were to say something about, you know, in a similar context. However, hearing that said, it was like, this is a kid who is speaking, you know, with the imagination that kids have. And he sees a problem, but he also sees a solution. And, you know, the thing that I took out of it was that he didn't see all white people as bad people. He actually saw it as like a way to get the bigoted white people to address themselves in the way that they address all of their problems, which is through destruction. But anyways, that was just, I don't think we even talked about it. I think I'm literally telling you about this for the first time right now. But that was, yeah, it was a fascinating thing. And it was also fascinating to see a lot of the moms in the group be like, oh, well, we don't really want to do that. Why would, you know, like, think of what we've gone through. Why would we want anybody to go through that? And one of the younger moms, she was like, I feel like we need to have an answer prepared for that. And it was in that, like, wasn't looking at me, but their peripherally were definitely checking out my reaction to it, which was interesting. And then, you know, I'll just say the last point that was really interesting was at the mental health section, which was run by the gentleman, one of the gentlemen that was working with We All We Got. And he actually apologized to me. He was like, man, I'm real sorry, but I'm just going to have to point you out a lot. He was like, you know, that we are like, this is great to be in a community of all black faces and all black bodies, except for you, my brother. And he apologized like right up front. He was like, I just need to tell you, like, I'm going to point you out. And it's like not a disrespect thing. It's just to like, how you doing? Like he was, yeah. He was great. He was like, he actually like, he took steps that were not necessary about addressing me, but he's also the mental health guy. So of course he, you know, did that. Yeah, but anyways, it was, I found it a pretty profound experience in a lot of ways. Most of which was that this is going to be the last comment before I pass it to you. But there is a responsibility of white folks to do mending and healing. And it's the way that I call it the DEI initiatives, you know, the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are such bullshit. There's such like liberal approaches to, you know, like we need to hire a certain amount of black folks and then everything's going to be good. And it's like, why don't we use our resources to support groups that already exist? Yes. You know, why don't we use our resources to, instead of you know, trying to get black people to come into our spaces and adapt to our community, why don't we do it where we're actually engaging on a human-to-human level with another community and strengthening that community and that space. And so I know that's like a really abstract, vague thing to say, but one of the actions is, you know, it's like, yeah, be fucking uncomfortable. Be a white person and be uncomfortable. Like, you know, to be honest, there was only one individual at the whole event after kind of being around it for a while, there was only one individual that I even felt any hostility from, and he didn't even say a word to me. I could just, I could sense it, but never actually did anything. Didn't single me out, didn't talk to me, nothing. And that happens 1,000 times in the other direction, and much, much worse. Yeah. And much, much worse consequences. Like, yeah. So anyways, yeah.
Wow. Yes, that was a lot.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm really uncomfortable, y'all. I got all of that out and just literally had the body rush. So, yeah, it's I don't mind talking about it, except I want everybody to know that I am fucking uncomfortable. So,
but that's the thing. I think the universe put Dorian and I together for a reason, because we are from two very extreme spectrums in terms in the grand scheme of like white supremacy, oppression, and just like institutional oppression, right? Not even so much talking about like socioeconomic stuff, because in that way, I think we kind of relate or I mean, I'm a Black woman, so I'm gonna always be at the bottom. But the distance between in terms of privilege is a little smaller when we talk about our upbringing and like the socioeconomic statuses of our families and things of that, which I think is beautiful too, because it allows us another level of understanding and relation. But I would say, so first, let me give my take on bringing the only white person in the space. For me, I think having Dorian in this space is an honor, because a lot of people of color have been harmed so severely through white supremacy by well-intentioned white folk, and just by people's bigoted views. And so there is a lack of understanding and a distrust. I want to say for me, Dorian is the exemplar that people can just be people. Right? And that he is the exemplar of what solidarity is in a fight for what's right, not just about race. A lot of our conversations are around the plight of Black and brown folk, because that is, that just lives in the work that we do. But something that I've learned about Dorian is that he is about what is right. And that could be exclusive to this fight, LGBTQ fight, two people on the street fight, and I appreciate that about him. And I think for me, showing up with Dorian was to just show like just my community that like there are folks who know that this shit ain't right and are okay with standing with us in solidarity, proudly, unwaveringly. If that's a word. I think I just made that up, but that was good. In an unwavering way. There we go. And so I appreciated that. There was a moment where we were in our groups and someone said, we were talking about fluid economics. And someone said, everybody here is a person of color. And one young lady said, not everyone. And I said, that is my partner in crime. That's my friend. And he is good here. And one, it was good to just stand up in that way it was definitely scary. But I always, like I said in the last episode, I always channel my Asada energy. So I'm never scared. So I was just like, you know, what's the worst that could happen? They could tell us, I doubt they're going to tell us to leave. It's a community event. They're just going to deal. But also watching Dorian fearlessly go out and be in community with folks kind of decreased some of the anxiety that I did know. And it wasn't a lot of people, maybe one or two people were experiencing. And I don't think that it was more about, I think it was more because it was a sacred space and the event was about Juneteenth. It was about liberation. And what I find too with people of color is that we're more afraid to offend a white person than we are upset that they are in community with us. And that's something that you're going to find with any oppressed group, right? Like most oppressed groups really just want to be accepted. They really just want the green light to exist. And I think because of propaganda and because of, really propaganda, we assume that all encounters are meant to be negative or violent or submersed in hate, when really that's not it. That's not it. And I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, but even those things aren't above a conversation and an experience. So yeah, that's my breathe out on that, Dorian. I'm gonna pass it back to you. Here's the alley-oop.
Yeah, it's so, you know, just to get in this, like, I noticed immediately just with the group that I was journeying with that there were certain things that were said by the kids that the adults were like really nervous that I heard. And the fact that one of them made the comment like, we should probably have a response to that. Mm-hmm. The way that I took it was that kid was being a kid, saying their truth, and that the adults were, nervous that I would report basically what I heard. And the reason they didn't have a retort to it was because they were kind of aligned with it, maybe not to the imagination of the child, but like with the we've all suffered at by being forced to live on this continent by white people, and we've never been treated as equals ever. And so it was really interesting to kind of get that sense. That being said, it's just, I don't know. White folks have a lot of responsibility. A lot of it has to do with empathy. If you notice that there are tons of well-intentioned white folks who I actually, to be honest, I don't even know if they're really well-intentioned. I think they think they're well-intentioned. But there are a lot of, quote unquote, liberal type white folks who, they'll vote for Barack Obama, or they'll, listen to hip hop music, or, any of those sorts of things. But also will completely deny any kind of racialized language, that they're not actually a part of the problem, or will get hostile even if any form of unconscious racism is taking place. And one thing that white people have to do all of us, is we have to literally step back and just say, like, all right, let me hear you out. It's not going to be 100%, but most of the time, it's like any other form of trauma, the first step is being heard. And, you know, I'll be honest here. Let me go to the most extreme examples. The in Harlem, the Israelites, the 12 tribes who they set up on. Yeah, see. All right.
They make me cringe.
Yeah. So, so yeah, they are the only group in my entire existence. When I lived in Harlem, every Saturday from noon to 4, they set up on 125th Street. They're the only group I've ever felt uncomfortable. Yeah, they're the only ones I've ever felt uncomfortable walking past, ever. Like, and I'm not talking about like, sometimes you come across like somebody who's like drugged out and acting weird, but like I've never actually been like, oh my God, me being a white person has made me a target. They're the only group that I've felt that, that being said, just utilizing empathy and listening skills, it's like, all right, so their ideology, don't align with it whatsoever. Like, there's some pretty good documentaries actually about them. Like they've got some pretty wild artwork in their home base in Harlem of like the Pope being killed, which is, I don't know, super interesting stuff. But ideologically, like I don't align with them whatsoever. And I actually find a lot of their ideology to be pretty informed by hate and pretty informed by ignorance. However, the reason why I do not hold them on nearly the same level as I would, let's say, the KKK or a group that's in like a neo-Nazi organization, or even just your general white bigot. The 12 Tribes of Israel, they've never held political power. KKK literally ran the state of Indiana in the 20th century. Like not 1800s, like in the 20th century, there were active KKK members in the governorship, in the state Congress. KKK had a regular rally in New York City for decades. KKK literally had multiple members in political power and economic power. The movie Birth of a Nation, which is a film about the KKK, was the very first film shown at the White House. So the 12 Tribes of Israel have never had that power. They've never run a country like the Nazis have. They've never invaded any place like the majority of like what the white supremacist movement has done and continues to aim to do. And so even though on an individual ideological level, I do find them to be very problematic, they are not nearly as dangerous as white nationalist groups. And they also, I view them more as people who have been beaten into submission and are grasping for anything to make sense. And yeah. So all that to say that, if you ever notice, whenever like free speech discussions gets brought up, it's in white communities, they'll often defend the right of neo-Nazis to be able to say what they want to say, saying like, I don't agree with it, but it's their right to do so. Whereas if a Black person kneels during the national anthem, it's not they have the right to do it. I don't agree with it. Like it's a fire them, fucking kill them. They don't deserve to have any comfort. And it's just, it's like, well, if you're really a free speech person, and you're like able to give the benefit of the doubt to a neo-Nazi, why are you not able to give it to, I'll say, like a very average human being, politically centrist in a lot of ways, who is doing something very peaceful? Why are you trying to put them into submission, basically? And the reason is white fragility, white insecurity, white rage, all of those things. And so, white people, shut the fuck up. Like, just literally, when you go into places that you are an outsider, be respectful. And the way you be respectful is you listen, even when it's uncomfortable. Even when nothing's being said and you're uncomfortable just because of your own self. Like, I'm literally uncomfortable right now talking to somebody who I know is not judging me.
Right.
But just by nature of talking about this, it's there are body triggers going on.
Yeah.
And
I think I'm fidgety.
Yeah.
Over here, like,
before
you know it, I'm gonna be on the floor.
Yeah. Well, and you notice,
but it's a good comfort, because then you'll never be uncomfortable again. Or at least the more you talk about it, the least uncomfortable you will be, right? I remember, do you mind me sharing when we were in Rikers? Okay, so I remember one time Dorian and I were having a conversation. We were coming out of a unit with, it was what was it? The Bloods in the Crips house, something like that. Anyway, we were talking about, Dorian was saying, like, sometimes when he comes into the units, just acknowledging his position as a white male showing up in the space, he may feel a little uncomfortable, especially when some of the bigger guys come close or stand up or whatever, which, let me first say, folks, is totally normal, okay? Because, and I'm probably going to get into a heavy bag right now. I might get a little, like, the dialect is going to change, but fuck with me for a second. Everybody experiences this in one way or another towards some person, right? Like, people of color, especially elders, get anxiety when they see young people, right? And all of it has to do with propaganda. Some of us who are not trained in mental health may see someone who is having a episode in the public, on the train or whatever, and you get anxiety, right? That is a normal response to the unknown. It is a part of your fight or flight, right? Let's stop making it seem like people are weird for having these anxieties when we know propaganda exists, when we know what the media is perpetuating about certain groups of people. Okay, right? So saying that to say that was just a disclaimer. Dorian was expressing that, like, sometimes he would get anxiety. The breakthrough for us was where I said, when I go into a unit and I see men who are 6 feet tall towering over me, I feel safe. Because in my community, that signifies safety. I valued that conversation so much. One, because Dorian's vulnerability. People are afraid to say those things. And when you're afraid to say those things, you miss the opportunity to move past it. And that's where we're at right now. Right? That's why our world is in the condition that it's in outside of capitalism. Capitalism is the other part. But a good part of why us on the community are not getting past the struggle is because we are too afraid to be real and honest and vulnerable. We're too afraid to go through the anxiety of it and the uncomfortability of it to push through. Dorian and I have had conversations about what it is to just be a white person, what it is to have privilege. And for me, I care for Dorian so much that I really just want to understand him. I want to understand what it is to be a white male. I want to understand and respect where he is too. Is it uncomfortable? Absolutely. It's more uncomfortable for me because I know that a lot of Black people are known to be prejudiced towards white people. And I never want to sound like I'm coming from a place of prejudice. I really am just curious to your experience. And I think I learned that. I went to a PD one time with Christopher Inman. He is the author of White Folks Teaching in the Hood and others too. He's also the author of Ratchetdemics. If you want to read some good content, get into that book, man. Because it talks a lot about how to service young people of color through the educational system and all other systems, to be honest. To be honest, it is not a if you wanna, it's a you need to read. It's like the Bible. If you really want to show up in these spaces and be effective, right? I love him. So I was in a PD with him when I worked for KIP, which is another white-led organization. I never forget, we were talking about our socioeconomic status and our backgrounds and where we come from. And I remember talking to one of the science teachers there, and she was sharing that her mom lived in a trailer park and her mom was really poor. And like, she could just see the difference. Her grandparents raised her. She could just see the differences in living with her grandmother and like that, the culture of that community, and going to the trailer park where her mom lived. And before I could even dive into the fact that she was raised by her grandmother, before I could even dive into the fact that like her mom didn't raise her and they lived in a trailer park, I was shocked at the fact that her grandmother raised her, because the way in which white culture was brought to me as a young person and growing up, we always thought that like white people always lived in a 2-parent household and like had money and was rich and like lived this lavish life. And I know in my second thought that like, of course, there are people who are of any race who come from struggle. And everybody has a story. But I want to say in my first mind, I was shocked. And so we set the platform to have those conversations. Also, she was shocked to hear that I went to an all-Black private school. She was also shocked. She was transparent in saying that, like, upon first meeting me, she was shocked at how well I could articulate myself. These are real conversations. Yes, we were uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable because the content wasn't valuable, uncomfortable because we didn't want to be offensive. And I think we were both open enough to receive a pushback if we were being offensive, but we're also in a good place to move forward. Yeah, Dorian, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I think so. That's an area that I do think white folks in general have to work on is the area of offensive versus not offensive. So now I wasn't there for you when you met this individual, the teacher you were talking about. I had a knee-jerk response immediately when I heard you say that she said she was surprised how articulate you were. Like, that was like a, what the fuck? What the fuck? Why the fuck would you ever say that? Now, that being said, this could be the space where she actually had a transition moment.
Right.
And all right, let me organize this as well as possible.
Okay.
All right, so white folks, it's okay to ask offensive questions or make offensive statements. However, there also needs to be mindfulness of your own positionality, that you have to interpret what would it feel like if somebody came up and went, yeah, I was just surprised you're smart. Like, you know, judging by who your people are, I would have never guessed that. Like that's how I translate that shit. And it's insanely offensive. So yes, white people, it's okay. You can ask offensive questions, but just realize that you better have put some fucking thought in before you ask an offensive question. You need to understand when something is offensive. And the easiest way to fucking know that is if you would be offended by the content of the question, not necessarily the specific details of the question, but oh, sorry, my little one finally just fell asleep. I'm watching the little one on the monitor. She finally went down.
Way out to so if you hear the door slam, do not fret.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, there just needs to be some mindfulness, and you need to understand why something would be offensive. We had one thing that I really do get bothered by is oftentimes I'll hear people when they're speaking about racism being cured. This happens a lot in the music world where some white supremacist fuckface like witnesses the musical ability of a black person playing saxophone or something, and they're always like, "Wow, how did you pull off that musical skill? I could never do that." And though it may be perceived as a compliment, it's also implying that it's just there's just some fucking racism to it that I'm having trouble articulating. I don't know. How would you help me maybe articulate this a little better? I sense that you get what I'm trying to say.
Do not mistake an opportunity to learn for an opportunity to be offensive, right?
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that you're clearly, like, that what you're going to ask is thought out in consideration of the person and how they may receive it.
Yeah. And the intentionality behind the question or behind the comment. This is actually very offensive, but also really funny. There's that show, C-Lab 2021. If you ever saw that, it was on Cartoon Network when we were in high school. And there's two characters, and their names are Debbie and Black Debbie. And the conversation between the characters is, well, why is her name Debbie and her name's Black Debbie? It's like, well, Black Debbie's black. And it's like, well, why isn't it Debbie and White Debbie? And that was actually like the commentary that the writers were doing was brilliant, but that was an eye-opener for my own self where it was like, wait a fucking second, why are we singling out the one Debbie for her skin color, not the other?
Right.
And that, you start to look and it's like, wait a second, this happens everywhere, in every place, in every way. And so you say, anyways, to respond to the comment that was made to you about someone being surprised that you were articulate, that is implying that most people of color this person has come across are not articulate, which is probably not the case. The case is probably they have not really come into contact with people of color.
Yes, and I should have given that context, because she did give that context first. She did say that, like, in the community that she grew up in, she didn't have many interactions with people of color. She did state that, like, in her childhood, there was like one family of color, and they were the family that everyone was told to stay away from. So the only idea of what people of color, how people of color show up, was things that she had seen on TV, which we all know are not always good, which are mostly bad.
Yeah, I did some educating with my parents just last week. Conversation came up talking to them, and we were talking about World War II and the GI Bill. And keep in mind, my grandpa served in the Army, was in Guadalcanal for a year and a half, he was a medic, so he didn't see combat, but he definitely saw a lot of aftermath of combat. But anyways, something that my parents did not know was that when soldiers returned, that the white middle class that we think about in the 1950s, that came from the GI Bill funding. Black soldiers were not given the GI Bill. They were not given that extra money to start a life or to go to college or any of those things. It was not given for the same service. They had served. They had gone overseas to fight the Nazis. They had gone to fight Japan. They had gone to fight Italy, and they returned home to not be allowed to vote, not receive the GI Bill.
Yep.
So it's that was one of I saw my mom actually go. They weren't allowed to get the GI Bill. She had never thought of it. She's in her 70s, and this is her father's generation and people her age who were direct beneficiaries of the GI Bill. And keep in mind, my family had a lot of economic problems. We did. But even in a low-income white family, we had a better baseline. Just by the factor of how white folks were treated versus black folks. And yeah, it was actually kind of encouraging to see my mom's response because she had never thought of that. It's annoying that it, this is 2022 and that moment, happened with somebody in their 70s. It's like, would have been great if you figured this out when you were 10 or but alas, education is education and people are all on their journeys and
yes.
And then I know I'm like kind of dominating this conversation, which I don't.
No, this is good. This is good.
But one thing that has really I've been trying to get out there on the people we work with at Rikers Island is that there are a lot of intellectuals in that space, and it's well-spoken people, and the juxtaposition comes where is it cool if I say black vernacular?
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah. So the way y'all talk when white people aren't around, I am now around it all the time, and it's first off, it's an honor and a privilege to hear it. Like I can always tell, like the more there were actually some individuals who not people in custody, but people we work with, some of the rec guys at the boat, who they were talking to each other in front of me. I'm not going to say their names, but I think you can figure it out. But they were doing all the hand signals and everything. And I actually felt honored to be present. It was because these were individuals when I met them, they were like, "Hey, how are you doing, Dorian?" And when it was all, when I had shown enough that it was no, be yourself, it turned into yo fool, it was amazing. It was amazing. But anyways, the thing that people get confused by in white supremacist culture is that vernacular is seen as an intellectual decision when it's literally a different language. I hear it as a different language that's related to English, but not English itself. And so I'm gonna, keep kind of churning this.
I would say for a person of color, I never forget being amongst coworkers and hearing my supervisor say, I think she said, yeah, I was acting like a cunt. And I'm like, because for us, that's a very bad word. Or just like, stop being a prick. I'm like, right?
Wow.
But I understand that that's like, that's also a code switch. That's a code switch. And that's really just what it is, a code switch. I think. So this is my theory behind it, right? Like a lot of the dialect that we use, and especially with women, is our permission to tap into our femininity and our culture in a way that is not otherwise acceptable under white supremacy. Right? And I think it has been diced down and passed down in many variations of ways. And I think it also holds an undertone of inclusivity of other oppressed groups too. But overall, that code switch, like that, what you're experiencing is our way to still show up in our Blackness as a result of like flagrancy laws, right? It doesn't in any way indicate that we are not intelligent. And I think if we really, like, if we're really scholarly about it, we should be beyond the place where we are judging people by the way they speak. Because if we go back to like just the pedagogy of the oppressed, like there's just wisdom in everybody. There's wisdom in everybody. It doesn't matter how many books you read. It doesn't matter how well you can, articulate yourself or your vocabulary. All of that means nothing to wisdom. Babies have wisdom. Babies are born with wisdom, with an understanding, and every day that they experience the world, they gain a little bit more wisdom. I remember Dorian was sharing with the baby, she went to the park and a child was crying and she knew to give them a hug or just like show she made a, right? And made a face of empathy. That's wisdom. That's like, when this happens, these are the proper responses to give a person comfort, because that's what they need in this moment. Right? And what we need to generate is wisdom. That's what we need to be sharing is wisdom. We can't get lost in the superficial shit. We can't be judging people in superficial shit. Because even just using the example that I gave about my coworker, if we were just stuck on her view of Black people and thinking that we can't articulate ourselves, and my, view of like white people thinking that they're always rich and living in 2-parent households, we would have missed out on the wisdom of what it was to be raised by someone other than our parents. Because we can relate there. We can also, our journeys were actually opposite, right? So like, well, no, our journeys were the same, actually. So like, my mom was who's who of American women. I lived on Riverside Drive with the Black affluent people in New York City. And then my mother died and I had to move to the projects. She grew up with her grandmother in a middle, income neighborhood, but had to journey to her mom's house in the trailer park. There's some relation that can happen there. Also understanding how to show up in both spaces. That's what I learned my code switch, right? And being able to apply that in a professional environment, because I'm sure she was working in a school in a very poor community. I'm sure that code switch, those shifting between environments, taught her how to navigate her professional life, taught her how to navigate her career, how to be valued as a professional, as a teacher, but also be able to connect with her students, understanding what it is to have to live and function in an impoverished neighborhood. And I think that's the thing, like, you know, but to our original point, that's why it's important to be uncomfortable sometimes, because there's so much meat. You know, in our last job, I definitely struggled with my supervisor there, and both supervisors. It was very difficult for me to operate under this white-led division, and not because it was white-led. I was okay with that when I came, but because of the way I was treated as a result. And I don't believe that in the beginning, folks were even aware. But also the struggle was that our program missed out on so much because my wisdom wasn't valued. And it wasn't valued because we couldn't get past the stereotypes. I never forget, I offered to go pick up resources from a storage, and it was implied that I might be a thief.
Or that you might be thought of as a thief. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, you were there.
I was right there.
It was implied that I might be thought of as a thief.
Yeah, and you wanted to go pick up notebooks, just so everybody's clear.
To service our people in custody. I wanted to pick
and
up
it was implied that
to go out my way because I had a car and we needed the materials. I was willing to go out my way to do that. And it was implied that I was a thief.
Well,
not because I had stolen anything, not because ever since I came to the office, people's stuff showed up missing, not because I got a rap sheet for stealing, none of that.
Yeah.
The only outlier between myself and my co-workers was that I was the only Black woman.
Yeah. And it was also, it was put out that even if you didn't steal anything, you would clearly be the most likely subject. Like, you know, it was like, well, if anything turned out missing, and it was like, how often do things go fucking missing?
Right.
Like,
right.
Like that it's like that you have to say that.
Right. Actually, I'll never forget my first day. Remember our first day? Mm-hmm. We were going to support in a meeting about a program that was being brought into the facility. And the same supervisor, when asked when told that I would be attending, rebutted and said, I'll find something for her to do. You can take Dorian. In hindsight of that, we went to the meeting and I advocated the whole meeting. I planned the entire event and advocated for the people we were servicing. Better than the person that brought us to the meeting. Right, Dorian? But to think, and again, the only outlier is that I'm the Black girl and a woman. So it was either that I was a woman or because I was Black. That was the only thing that was different from the other two parties that were going to the meeting. Dorian and I started on the same day. Right? And in that moment, so much wisdom would have been lost. In that moment, it turned from a press op to an actual program based off of my wisdom and my respect for the people in custody and my willingness to advocate for them. And I didn't even know them. We had probably gone into a unit like once.
Yeah, this is like day 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sharing that not to tell on nobody or anything. Like, you know, it is what it is. We know that these systems exist in these spaces. It's shocking every time for a person who's experiencing it because you want to believe that people are just better. But it's not shocking to the grand scheme of what this fight looks like and what the ugliness is of it, right? But I'm saying that just to show real examples where we can miss out on wisdom solely relying on bias. And I just implore us to have uncomfortable conversations, be nervous and uncomfortable in your body and move past it. So you could get to the wisdom, so we could start being better people for each other. Word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a book that I'm reading right now. It's My Grandmother's Hands. It's by, of course, I'm brain farting on the name of the author. But it's about racial and transgenerational trauma. Resmaa Menakem. That's the author, and he's a therapist, trauma specialist, and he works with old wisdom and new science is the way he describes it, and it's around bodies and nervous systems, and it's heavy. But one thing he talks about, that a way to think about it is there's clean pain and dirty pain, and the uncomfortable feeling that we're talking about this entire episode, that is clean pain. It is painful, and it is a struggle to go through these uncomfortable things, but it is actually a healthy pain. It's you're processing through it so that you can arrive at a new location instead of being stuck in the same situation. A lot of the issues that we've come across with places of employment is cowardice gets in the way of addressing issues. And in fact, by addressing issues, the cowardice jumps into the space of making sure that things are not rattled, even when you intellectually know that the system is toxic and not only not helping people, but actually damaging people. I always think about a lot of the officers that we've come across who, I'll say this right up front, like the job at Rikers, I developed a bit more empathy than I thought I would have for the officer class, because I had never really considered that the majority of officers are coming from the same neighborhoods, sometimes same families as the people in custody. And a lot of those traumas are living through these officers, and they're given a slight amount of power, but then they're overworked and not supported whatsoever. And they're expected to go and work with a population that has behavioral issues to begin with. And it's going to create more and more trauma. And it's just this vicious cycle. But these things can literally be addressed if human beings acknowledge their own cowardice, their own fear, and stomach it and go through it. And that's one thing that one book I encourage a lot of people to check out, a lot of white folks, is the autobiography of Malcolm X, because and I listened to the audiobook, which is narrated by Lawrence Fishburne, so he's like fucking great. But there are sections of that book where I was fucking uncomfortable. He is talking about the white devil. He's talking about the creation from Yakub, who was a scientist who had invented the white devil to destroy the earth and destroy the planet and all these resources. And Malcolm's just talking straight out of, I'll say like the fundamentalist NOI teachings. And I will tell you, like right up front, as a white human, it was very difficult to hear some of the stuff, because not only do I not believe it, but there's hostility to it. But the reason why it's so important for white folks to read this book or listen to this book is because Malcolm is such a genuine, authentic thinker that there is not an ounce of bullshit in the entire book. Malcolm X, that's one thing I think anyone can understand from him, is that man had zero bullshit to offer. He was all truth, all honesty at all times. Yes. And he moves past the white devil experience, and he explains it where he's like, you have to realize I was in prison, for basically for having sexual relations with a white woman. Mm-hmm. And he's like, my house had been attacked by the KKK when I was growing up. My father was most likely murdered by a white mob, and it was marked as a suicide. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you have to realize I was in this point in my life, and for somebody to come up and be like, hey, you ever notice how badly you're treated? Well, I know exactly who's treating you this way. And he's like, so you have to understand that's why I accepted that teaching just so blatantly. But he moved past it, and I'm getting emotional now that I'm actually saying it out loud, because that's the whole point, is that we have to hear these uncomfortable things, because I was uncomfortable with the entire story of the white devil and the creation of the white man. I was very uncomfortable listening to it. However, there's also a lot of truth in it. As troubling as some of the stuff that maybe came out. I'll just fucking go back to the 12 tribes of Israel. It's like, yeah, I find a lot of their theology to be pretty toxic and pretty dangerous. There's reasons they got there. And it's like, we got to address those reasons. Like, you don't want that kind of shit in the world. You got to find the root cause. Like, you don't want Donald Trump in the White House. Maybe don't vote for Ronald Reagan. Like,
I'm sorry. All right, go ahead, Dorian.
No. It's on you.
That's the other thing too. Like today, currently, we have to address what we have just gone through. Right? So there aren't many examples to support a lot of the bias against people of color. But understand, in the last year, with COVID, we've watched our family members and loved ones die in a disproportionate rate. There has been an uptick in fetal mortality and mothers in labor, the mortality rate of mothers in labor amongst people of color, which, let's be honest, in hospitals, they're predominantly serviced by white people. And we just watched these people storm the fucking Capitol. We just watched that on live television. So if you are experiencing a person of color who is a little guarded, who may display some bigoted views, you can't really blame them.
There is an individual that I know who I know him from the music world. He's a classical pianist. I kind of describe these people as conservative liberals. I think he's liberal in regards to like politicians he votes for, but he's pretty conservative in his ideology. And he got on me about on Facebook, basically talking about the people storming the Capitol. And I went, could you imagine what would have happened if BLM activists went in? But this is why. So you're on the same page as what I was trying to get across, which was that there would have been a massacre of the activists.
Yes!
This is how this.
Come on now.
This is how this dude responded.
I can't snap. I broke my fingers, guys.
Yeah, you're gonna vomit from when you hear what this guy said.
Let me just lay on the floor.
Yeah, he literally went, yeah, if BLM did it, then the whole place would have been destroyed. As in, they would have gone in and trashed the place. Whereas,
a man took a piss on Nancy Pelosi's desk and rubbed his genitalia all over her shit. People died. Law enforcement were actively in combat with protesters for an upwards of 6 to 10 hours. I watched a press conference. All we saw was a bunch of people parading into the Capitol. We did not see clear representations of the murder that took place, the stampeding that took place, the vandalization that took place. What? And be clear, BLM it does not encourage violence. They call for peaceful protest. But as it has always been, historically, police and law enforcement and sometimes military presence stand in as an agitator. If folks are outside with bullhorns and drums and signs, why do we need guns and dogs and tear gas? It heightens the threat. It heightens the anxiety. It heightens the tension. How about allow people to exercise their constitutional right? Because we're supposed to be covered under the Constitution. How about allow people to exercise their constitutional right to protest, barrier them, and protect them? The protest would be, they usually send out a time, protest is from 1 to 4. The protest ends up going to 12 o'clock at night because people getting fucked up by the police. Just give them the 1 to 4. Let them stand out there. Let them stand up for what they believe in and let them go home.
So, do you see the thing that is shared on the screen?
Yeah, I see it.
This is a 1967 political cartoon about Martin Luther King Jr. And this actually, our last episode, we were talking about Fred Hampton and, just how even someone like MLK, who he's the only civil rights activist that our education system really even brings attention to. And it's because of his nonviolent, peaceful protest messaging. But at the time, so for our audio listeners, what this is there's a news reporter speaking to Martin Luther King Jr., and the text says, "I plan to lead another nonviolent march tomorrow, but around them there's an unconscious man, there's multiple cars on fire, there's buildings in the back that are burned down and smoke is flying. Yeah, there's broken sign, there's broken bottles everywhere, there's bricks shattered." This was the presentation that the media was putting out there regarding Martin Luther King Jr. and his message of peaceful protest. Yeah, and I always think about this cartoon because this is exactly how we treat BLM today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's the same with the Black Panther Party. Like we talked about that the last episode. They were the Black Panther Party for protection. And we made them out to be a terrorist group. They were for protection in the same way that the police are supposed to operate, in the same way that community watchers are supposed to operate. They're protection because people were being harmed in a disproportionate way.
Oh, and also these fucking Second Amendment activists, that's all BLM or Black Panthers were doing.
Mm-hmm.
They were using their lawful right to carry a weapon for protection. That's it. But it's portrayed as militant terrorist group. And it's like, yeah, we don't view the white folks to do the same thing.
Did you ever hear of the Black Panthers 10-point program?
Mm-hmm. So
some of the tenets of the 10-point program, right, which is what governed the Black Panthers. These are a few. And if you could pull it up, Dorian, that'd be great. So it says, number 1, we want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our Black and oppressed communities. We believe that Black and oppressed people will not be free until we are able to determine our destinies in our own communities, ourselves, by fully controlling all the institutions which exist in our community. Number 2, we want full employment for our people. We believe that the federal government is responsible and obligated to give every person employment or guaranteed income. We believe that if the American businessman will not give full employment, then the technology and means of production should be taken from the businessman and placed in the community so that the people of the community can organize and employ all of its people and give a high standard of living. We want an end to the robbery by the capitalists of our Black and oppressed communities. We believe that this racist government has robbed us, and now we are demanding the overdue debt of 40 acres and 2 mules. 40 acres and 2 mules were promised 100 years ago as restitution for slave labor and mass murder of Black people. We will accept the payment in currency, which will be distributed to our many communities. The American race has taken part in the slaughter of our 50 million Black people. Therefore, we feel this is a modest demand that we make. We want decent housing fit for the shelter of human beings. We want decent education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. We want completely free healthcare for all Black and oppressed people, right? Because let's not forget about the Tuskegee Airmen experiment. We want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of Black people, other people of color, all oppressed people inside the United States, all oppressed people inside the United States. We want an immediate end to all wars of aggression. We want freedom for all Black and oppressed people now held in U.S. federal, state, county, city, and military prisons and jails. We want trials by a jury of peers for all persons charged with so-called crimes under the law of this country. And we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, peace, and people's community control of modern technology. And I was intentional about reading every single one because nowhere in there does it state we hate white people. We want to kill people. We're going to take anything by any means of aggression. This sounds like someone begging for their life. Not just that, but every last one of these tenets are things that we are still fighting for. How about that? I'm gonna pass it to you, Dorian. Alley.
Yeah. So, in conclusion of being the only white person at, at the event, you know, I've heard, I'm actually going to quote a comedian that's kind of awkward to quote now because of everything that kind of came out from him. But you know Louis C.K.? You ever hear his stuff?
Who?
Louis C.K. He's a comedian from Boston. He's considered a genius in a lot of ways. I still do consider him a comedic genius. He got, during the Me Too movement, some nasty shit came out about him that we can cover in another time.
Okay.
But it's awkward because the best person to comment on his situation would have been him, but it's about him. So, but anyways, he talks about how one of his bits is about white people getting offended by like, oh, well, if I can't say the N-word, why can you say cracker? And he's like, oh no, just really ruined my day, bringing it back to those times when I had money, power, and people. Just what am I gonna do? and the thing is, like, that's a comedy bit, but I actually know there's a specific person that I served with in the Army, white guy, who Snoop Dogg, when the Oscars So White thing came out, Snoop Dogg did a video where he was like, motherfucking crackers. And my friend, white friend, was actually like, I mean, what, like, why can he say that about white people? And my friend was actually offended by Snoop Dogg using the word cracker to describe the Oscar So White hashtag. And you know, the argument was like, why can he say that, but I can't say
the N-word?
Yeah. And you know, I wasn't skilled enough yet at like I knew what he was saying was ludicrous, but I didn't have the skill set yet. Or to be honest, the courage to like actually say something at this point. But it really is, it's like, you know, if I could go back in time, it is one of those things where it's like, all right, let's weigh the fucking pros and cons. Right. Where did the word cracker come from? It's the fucking whip. You know, like, it's the whip cracker. That's where it fucking comes from. You know, it's like that does not hold the same weight. It just does not hold the same weight. And
it's so
anyways,
interesting.
Yeah.
This conversation came up last night in our circle with our young people. And so first let me say, like, I don't ascribe to any negative connotations about anyone. I'm really very much about no put downs. I don't call my people niggers. Nigger, what's up, nigga? It doesn't even sound well coming out of my mouth. And I definitely just don't feel comfortable calling a white person a cracker. I don't feel comfortable calling a Hispanic person a spick or calling somebody a honky or any of those. They're just negative connotations, and I'm good, right? Bad person, I'll call you a stupid asshole maybe, but those other things, there's just so much history and so much harm that live in those names that my spirit can't even journey with that. So let me just say that. But the young people were having this conversation, and one of the young people said, if you call a white person a cracker, the only thing that happened is that you called them a cracker. But if a white person calls a black person a nigger, their entire fate goes down the drain. The moment that you are labeled a nigger, you are automatically considered to be incompetent, ignorant, a heathen, and nobody really don't want to deal with you, especially not in the white community. And I grappled with that for the majority of the night, and I kind of just agreed to disagree. But hearing you say that, like, especially the piece about the privilege and just like the joke, it's kind of saying the same thing. And I'm also just saying, like, we shouldn't be calling each other anything. But conceptualizing that, we ain't got no power anyway. So it's just, we just calling somebody a bad name, which is a bad thing. But being called a nigger is also just heavily weighted in so many other ways. So yeah, that's a hard one.
I mean,
I was called a nigger too, and I cried. I was on 79th Street by Chase Bank. I was trying to go to the bank. And you know how you're going and someone's coming and you kind of do like a dance to kind of get past each other? That happened with an older white man. And I apologized, even though we were both kind of just doing this back and forth. So I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. He said, move the fuck out my way, nigger. And I went into the bank hysterically in tears. Because that was the first time something like that happened to me. And also, I was raised very sheltered from the fight and the war, at least to be able to conceptualize it or just have a conscious, to conceptualize it. We didn't talk about this stuff in my household. The emphasis was on what I needed to do to succeed in life, but also in a very toxic way in response to generational trauma relating to the war, relating to racism and all of that, I've been able to conceptualize that now. But we never blatantly talked about racism. So having that experience, and I was also in my 20s, I want to say, when this happened. Having that experience in my 20s was a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking experience. And that's probably why I would never use any of those terms towards a person, because I would never, ever want to be on the other side of making somebody feel that low, that degraded, and that hurt, and especially in a millisecond. So yeah,
we experience it at Rikers when you see officers just put a person in custody in place. They say inmate. They go, all right, inmate.
Yeah. Can I share?
Yes, please do.
So one day, I'm getting in my vernacular. So one day I'm at lunch and I'm talking to a resident, a person in custody that I've never serviced. He wasn't in any of my programs, but I did see him in the hallway almost every time we were in this facility. And we would exchange niceties. Good afternoon. How are you? All's well, because that's just how I show up in spaces anyway, right? By the end of the week, everybody knows the music lady. Because that's the good part about being in community with people. Want to acknowledge me. Anyway, we're going on a tangent. Let me bring it back. So we're at lunch. I'm getting some food from this gentleman. And first, an officer says, what are you doing? You need a mask. And so the gentleman just gently said, like, oh, I don't have one. Like, I don't know where to get it from. And I believe this might have been his first time on this assignment, because usually I see him doing the transport of food to the units, not in the staff cafeteria. So the woman says, which I thought she was a little too aggressive too, but still in some way respectful, I guess. I don't know. She says, okay, well, we're going to get you one because you need a mask. All of a sudden, this loud voice comes from behind me. Shut your fucking mouth, inmate. Nobody asked you to say anything. Get the fucking mask and shut your fucking mouth. So I started channeling my side of energy, and I turned around, and it happened to be a white officer. I felt assaulted. My spirit was assaulted. My legacy was assaulted for so many reasons. That was a trauma. I am watching this Black person in a jumpsuit in custody on the plantation, the modern day plantation, being called an inmate, quote unquote, or side quote, nigger over my shoulder. My heart broke for him. And so I addressed the officer. I said, I'm sorry, but this gentleman did not deserve that level of response. He didn't say anything that warranted that. All he said is he just doesn't have one. He didn't say it with a tone. He didn't say it with an attitude. That's all he said. But also, you have to be very mindful of how you show up in this space as a white male. And so, you know, the abridged ending to that was I got in trouble for addressing the officer, which kind of further perpetuated that trauma because it felt like I got in trouble for addressing the white man about harming this Black and brown man. And there was no conversation and no follow-up about what he did to that man.
You got in trouble.
I got
in trouble.
Yeah.
For speaking up to somebody being abusive.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got reprimanded, but also was told that I'm not allowed to speak up or advocate for myself. And I need to report any instances like that to my white supervisor, who will then advocate on my behalf. So I was disempowered all the way around. But I am thankful that I did advocate for that man. And I'm hoping that he was at least empowered in some small way by me advocating for him. Yeah.
I can't even talk. No, that was one of the most offensive things I remember you going through. Because you know, you had a secondary trauma response.
Yeah.
To just the dehumanization of another human being, you know, and I don't know. People ask a lot of pretty ignorant questions, but like some are more ignorant than others. I had somebody ask me, they were like, so, you know, how many evil people have you come across? And it's like 0.
Right.
I haven't come across a single
evil person.
You know, here's another one actually. You know, I was talking to family members about trans people recently, and you know, I mentioned how there are trans houses and there are mixed houses with trans and cis women, and you know, I asked the question. It was like, how many incidents do you think there have been of sexual assault from someone born male and who has transitioned to female? And it's like, how many incidents? 1. You know, how many incidents have happened with people born female who still present as female? And there have been hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
Happens all the time. Mm-hmm. And the fear that is propagandized is that by mixing trans people with cis people is that there's some uptick of sexual violence towards women perpetuated by the trans people, the trans women. And I might be sounding somewhat ignorant with my terms, and I'm still working on this. But the actuality is that there is more sexual violence from people born women to other women than there are people born women who are trans women to people born women and continue to present as women.
Yes.
It's so fucking offensive because the thing I didn't even mention was that one incident might not even be true. I mean, remember we were talking to one of the social workers downstairs? Yeah, it might not even be true. It may have been a setup because the trans person who is was basically convicted of the crime of sexual assault may have a pretty severe learning disability and may have been coerced into confessing to something they didn't even do. Yep. To add on to it, are you? I know we're kind of we've been recording for a while now, but this is something. You know what? Maybe we can talk about it another episode because this will open a whole new can of worms.
All right.
So yeah. You know what? We'll close it there. So the moral of the story is, white folks, stop trying to get your spaces filled with people of color. Accept people of color. Make opportunities for people of color, but the mission should not be filling up the space with people of color to make your organization stronger. What you should do is go into communities and into spaces where people of color are organizing on their behalf and support. And be prepared to hear uncomfortable shit and sit with that uncomfortability and use that as a growth. And make mistakes, make a lot of mistakes, but own your motherfucking mistakes.
Yeah. Own your mistakes and be okay with making them. It is okay. When you think of your scholarly journey, you are prepared to make mistakes. You are prepared to go into calculus and not know what the fuck they're talking about until like week 4. You are prepared to go into any realm of unfamiliarity and flop a little bit. It's okay to do that in social environments when we're talking about the uncomfortability of racial divide. It is okay. Foster a space where it is open and prepared for mistakes. Maybe leading with that. Hey, don't really know much. Not trying to be offensive, really just trying to understand. And please correct me. Please push back if I am offending you so that I can correct myself. And I want to say same thing for Black people too. Like, stop being afraid to understand what you don't understand. And that's not just Black and white. We need to be journeying with all people. We need to be understanding all people.
I'll tell you, one of the most fascinating forms of bigotry I've ever witnessed that really kind of was an education moment was when Heinel and I used to live in Harlem. The bigotry between the African Americans who grew up in Harlem and the African immigrants.
Yes.
Like we were literally on a bus once, and a Nigerian guy came on, very clearly Nigerian, had accent and everything. And this African American guy looked to my wife and I, and he was like, "Don't those Africans smell like shit?" He said that to us. Like, and it was just like, no, and he literally like just trash talked this guy, yes. Not to him, but about him to us. It was just, yes. And we just had this like eye opener of like, huh, yeah. That's
And
I didn't know.
But it's also like, it's definitely reciprocal. Part of the reason why I made it my business to get a car is because I got tired of arguing with African cab drivers and being disrespected. I've probably been called the B word at least 4 times, simply because I would not allow them to overcharge me. But I have a niece whose father is from he's from Sinhalese, right? That's how you say it. Also, my brother-in-law, Senegal. I said Sinhalese. He is from Senegal. My niece's father, my brother-in-law, his father is from Ghana. And so I've definitely had conversations with folks just about the divide amongst us. And it's really the same shit, like ascribing to stereotypes. And I think, on the one end, I think in terms of people who are born in Africa, who migrate here, they rely heavily on stereotypes, in terms of how they view us, but also living in communities with us and seeing us in the war, not seeing us own anything, not seeing us have anything, creates a disregard and a disdain for it. And I think for us, there's a resentment, of course, because we can't own anything and can't access anything. But there's also just an ignorance because we are so disconnected from our history and our culture. And all of that is just generational trauma. All of that is a subsidiary of slavery.
It's, one of the many missions that I subscribe to is kind of guiding educational material on the complexities of bigotry, where it's, I've surprised a lot of my my Black comrades when I let them know that, like my wife experiences anti-Semitism. And like they're not considered Jewish people are not considered white people by the white supremacist culture. And it's like, what do you mean they're not considered white people? And it's like, not considered white people. Or if you ever look at any Eastern European or like group, people from Turkey, people from Hungary, people from Russia, they're not considered white in certain other parts of Europe. Even if we go all the way to Anglo-Saxon, England, I was actually talking to you about this a little earlier today, but, the Scottish were oppressed, still are oppressed by the English. And, it's one of those things where like, I'm Scottish and I'm white as fuck here in the United States. Mm-hmm. There was an individual that I was working with in custody who's from Egypt and white presenting. And they were telling me about how a lot of Black folks considered him to be a white guy, even though he didn't understand it because he's African. And on the other side of it, though, white people saw him as an Arabic guy. And, it's just like there are so many bizarre complexities to these spaces. And it's just really important to have these, not just the dialogues, but to have this process work.
Yes.
I'm going to end it with just an idea that I learned about recently, but it's in regards to trauma. And the way that I heard it is that trauma is not a destination. It is simply a process. Mm. And when you come to realize that, it means that we can actually move past the trauma.
Come on, Dorian. Yeah. Get that wisdom, Dorian. I don't have no snaps. My snaps are coming back. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Cool. So with that, any last thoughts? Want to close us out?
Dorian, you're just dope. That's my last thought.
Aw, you're dope. You're more dope. So
no, I'm just regular dope. Don't come back for that one. Yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you guys for journeying with us here at Materia Music. Yeah, look out for the next episode. I can't wait to reveal some more truth. Keep being honest, keep being real, keep feeling, keep talking, stay in the conversation. And that's it for Dorian and DeMarisa, Materia Music.
Don't forget to support us on Patreon.
There you go. That's Dorian's line. Peace.